In today's lecture, I'd like to talk about interest rates. Previously in the course, we've seen many problems in which an interest rate has been given, and we've used this interest rate in calculations. But the interest rate has been given in a variety of different ways. It's been quoted as being the rate paid by a bank for an investment, or it's been said that the character in the problem could invest his or her money at such and such an interest rate elsewhere, or other ways. But by and large, the choice of an interest rate, the reason why an interest rate is chosen, hasn't really been made clear. And when we're looking at choosing alternatives based on economic issues, that interest rate becomes very important. Because depending on the interest rate, a present worth will be quite different in value than for a different interest rate. Same with an annual worth, and also with the rate of return method, the interest rate is a critical issue. So where do these interest rates come from? How do we choose an interest rate to use in a calculation? Well, if we're working out a problem involving bank interest rates where an interest rate is stated as being paid, well, we can use that rate. But if it's a decision involving a piece of plant floor equipment, what interest rate do we choose? Well, the interest rate has a number of different components that can be taken into account. One is availability of funds. If I have an investment to make and my money is borrowed from the bank at 10% interest, well, it doesn't make much sense to invest in something where I'm only going to earn 8% interest, because then I'm losing 2%. However, if I'm borrowing at 10% and I'm going to be earning 12%, well, that's a fairly good investment. However, if I'm borrowing a lot of money from the bank and the bank says, no, we don't want to lend you any more money, and I have to raise my money, for example, through an equity offering in my company, selling shares in my company, the cost of raising that capital through selling equity may be higher than raising the capital through debt. And so it may cost me an equivalent of 15% interest raising through equity, and so my investments would have to earn even more than that. If I'm an individual and I'm borrowing money for a car, if I'm borrowing it from my father at no interest rate, I'm going to be much more likely to buy the car than if I'm borrowing it from the bank at 10% interest. So the same principle applies in personal investment as with corporate investment. Competing investment opportunities is another thing that controls the interest rate. If I have two different investments and one earns, say, 8% and one earns 12%, and I only have enough money to invest in one of them, well, by setting the interest rate that I think is necessary to earn higher, I can eliminate the less desirable alternative. So it kind of depends on what's available. If I have high earning investments available, then the interest rate I should use in my calculation should correspondingly be high. But if I have capital available and all I have is low earning investments available, then the interest rate I should use would tend to be low. Risk. What risk is a measure of the uncertainty that an investment is actually going to give me the return I want. When we invest in a bank account, we have a fair amount of certainty that we're going to earn the interest stated. But as you know from reading the papers over the last few years, there have been a number of bank failures, especially in the US, but even here in Canada. And if the bank fails, depending on the insured level by the bank insurance agency, we could lose, in fact, our investments. If we invest in stocks, of course, our risk is higher. If we invest in our cousin's new business venture, our risk is extremely high. And the interest rate that we use in our calculations for projects with higher risks should be correspondingly higher. You don't invest in a gold mine stock, which is very high risk, unless you expect to get very high returns for that. But investing in Bell Canada or some blue chip stock, we expect to get earn lower interest off that investment. So the risk controls an appropriate interest rate. Short-term and long-term investments. If I invest in something that earns a certain amount of interest, and it's over with quickly, that gives me a great deal of flexibility. In that if another investment opportunity comes up, which gives me a higher rate of return, my money will be released from the short-term investment fairly quickly. I can invest it in this new opportunity. However, if I invest in a long-term investment, then let's say I invest in something that earns 10% interest but ties my money up for 5 years. If after I make that investment, a year later, an opportunity comes up that I can earn 20% interest, my money's locked up in this long-term investment. And I lose flexibility. I'm unable to invest in that new opportunity. So that means I should be more hesitant about investing in long-term opportunities. In other words, the interest rate that I use for long-term investments should be higher than for short-term investments. And the fifth factor I have listed here for determining an interest rate is the going price of money. In a previous example, in one of these lectures, I gave an example of an interest rate of 55%. And that really sounded odd because we're used to interest rates on money being in the 5 to 15% range, maybe it's 20%. Because that's what we see when we borrow money from the bank or look at the interest charged in our Visa accounts and so forth. And we're familiar with mortgage rates and so forth. And they're all in that range as this is the going price of money. That's what we expect investments to earn. And this expectation has an effect because if we're given an interest rate that doesn't correspond to this expectation, it has to be justified. Whereas if it's within that range, then it sort of matches our intuition, it matches what we expect, and we don't question it. So that going price of money has an effect on the interest rate we choose because we have to justify it to others in many cases. So all of these factors compete in a choice of an interest rate. And for a company to choose an interest rate for making economic decisions is a very difficult problem. Often the survival of the company depends on an appropriate choice of interest rate because economic decisions, are based upon it. We decide what equipment to buy, when to buy it, how to raise funds, how much to raise, and so forth. So the decision of an interest rate, or interest rates to use in economic decisions, is really fundamentally a policy decision. And it's a policy decision that's fundamental to the company, that's fundamental to its survival, and the only people that can generally make it are top management, the president with advice of his financial and engineering officers. So by and large, for engineers working within an organization, the interest rates used for economic decisions will be set by someone else. It'll be a policy that will be available to you. If you're making decisions for yourself, all you can do is make a judgment call. You've got to decide for your own personal decisions or for your own company what an appropriate interest rate should be. As we work through problems in the next few weeks, you'll see the implications of these interest rates and exactly how they are used in decision making. And over time, within this course, I think you'll get a lot of experience which will be useful for your own decision making in choosing the interest rate. But if you're working in a firm, the thing to do would be to ask someone else in the firm what the appropriate interest rate to use is, because it will have been established sometime in the past. Thank you.